Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the classic Stagecoach shotgun. Basically a short double barrel shotgun. This is a Chinese made one. I got this about 8 years ago. It was $350. I think nowadays they still go for $350 to $400. It's a good place to start out with if you're interested in a double barrel shotgun. And if you really get into it, decide that you really like it, then later on you can buy a more expensive one. The good ones really get more expensive. These cheap ones, they have very basic trigger system. Because I've actually removed the triggers, right? Internally, the sears are almost exactly like this Flintlock pistol that I have here. Okay. So it's almost exactly the same design, almost, right? Not exactly, because the way it works is the hammers on this one don't rest on the firing pins. Yeah, only when you're pressing it do they actually go forward and hit it. If you're not pressing it, they won't go forward. So there is a little bit of a difference in the trigger mechanism, but it's pretty close to what I see in my cap muskets, and also in my Flintlock muskets. Okay, so what we're gonna do is let's fire a couple of shots with this, right? So the way you open this up, you push out like that, right? You have to manually cock these hammers one by one. One of the things I will say about this double barrel shotgun is that even though it was a cheap one, $250, they were true to the design concept where the right barrel is slightly bigger than your left barrel, right? So the idea with that is because your right barrel is slightly bigger, your first shot has a wider spread pattern, and then your second shot has a more constricted shot pattern. So the idea is if you're bird hunting or something, bird's coming over your head, it's moving in that direction. First shot's going to give you a wider pattern, and then as the bird moves further away, a little bit more distance, you can take that second shot where your pattern is going to be a little bit tighter, right? So basically, even though it doesn't have a choke in the barrel, right, the barrels have built-in chokes by virtue of the right barrel being a little bit wider than the left one. Okay, so that's one of the things that you want to look for when you're shopping around for a double barrel shotgun. You want to make sure it's true to that design. I don't see why they wouldn't make it true to that design. Yeah, let's take a couple of shots. We'll be shooting at that black target over there, and you'll be able to. I'm about 25 feet away here. You'll be able to see the pattern, right? The size of the pattern. So let's pop this open. So you can see the size of the pattern. I'm gonna take another shot a little bit lower. At this distance, right, so pop this open, pull the empty shells out. Okay, so with this, and this is as short as I think you can legally make it. I think it's an 18-inch barrel, without this becoming a short barrel, so basically it's 18 inches without having to get into NFA items. So with 18 inches over here, my pattern on those two shots that you see over there is 5 to 6 inches, right? At 25 feet, not 25 yards, 25 feet. So 6 inches is about that big, right? So right away you can see that with this gun, you have to aim, right? Unless you're like point blank range, right? At a target that's 25 feet away from you, right? 6 inches, like if you don't aim, you could be here, here, here. You can easily miss. So the first thing that I want to knock out is this old myth that with a shotgun you don't have to aim. You do have to aim because at close distances the shot hasn't had enough time to spread. Okay, the shot is, I don't know, in this case about 72, about 0.75 inches, 0.75, 3/4 of an inch when it's coming out of the barrel. Right, and then it slowly spreads. So when it gets 25 feet out, it's opened up to 6 inches. It's not until it gets out to, let's say about 60, 70 feet that you get like a 12-inch pattern. Okay, so it slowly opens up. It's got to go at least 2 to 3 times further than that in order for it to really open up. Okay, so first thing I want to knock out with the shotgun, you do have to aim, because at 25 feet your spread is only about 6 inches. Now, what I want to do, and this is one of the fun things I like to do, this is kind of like one of the benefits of this gun, and almost like the main reason why I have it. Okay, a fun thing to do with this gun, right? Nothing in there, right? Is to put, because the way it works is you fire your first trigger first, so that's the right side, then you go to the left one for your left side, put both fingers on the triggers and pull back at the same time, fire both barrels at the same time. That's a fun thing to do. Now with this gun I gotta be careful, because it does have like a hair trigger. So when I get my fingers in there, gotta be careful I don't set this gun off. Obviously this isn't a gun I would use for home defense. One of the things to be aware of if you do plan to use something like this for home defense is, these old style triggers, they can be, I mean, they can be very hard, they can be very light. You gotta know what you got there, right? Because it's basically a cheap gun. So I'm gonna cock both barrels here, right? Both fingers on the trigger now, right? We're gonna double shoot both of them at the same time. There you go. That was 2 barrels. Let's try that again. That's fun. That's like the main thing I like about shooting this shotgun. I'm gonna shoot in that direction so you guys can see the freaking double barrels. Nice thing here is I can shoot 360 degrees. So cock the gun. Go a little bit this way so you guys can see this. Both barrels at the same time. Now, one of the things that I've done this a lot with this shotgun, fire both barrels at the same time. One of the things that will happen, and I don't know if it would have happened if I kept doing it. I don't know if it would not have happened if I wasn't doing it. But after shooting this for a couple, I don't know, for about 6 months or so, what I found is a lot of times when I went to shoot my one barrel at a time, both barrels would shoot together just from the vibration. So the vibration of the first barrel would would make the trigger drop on the second barrel. Okay, so when you fire, sometimes the vibration from the first shot will drop your hammer on the left side, and both shots will fire together when you only intend to fire one barrel. And that's one of the things you gotta be aware of with these cheap Chinese-made shotguns. Okay, I don't know how common this problem is or this issue is. I took out the triggers, and I did work on them a little bit. I don't remember what I did. This was a long time ago that I actually worked on the triggers, and I actually did improve that situation where the gun was less sensitive when I would fire the first shot. It was less prone to firing the second shot. However, it can happen with these cheap Chinese-made double-barrel shotguns. Okay, so that's something for you guys to be aware of. Okay, so let's kind of talk about this gun, its place in its history, how it kind of sort of developed. Right. So before this was a cartridge firing gun. Right. Before this was taking, cartridges that contain primer, gunpowder shot. These were cap lock guns, and before that they were flintlock guns. Okay, so over here I've got a flintlock pistol, right? So single barrel, the flintlocks on the right side here. So as you can imagine, it doesn't take much engineering, all right, or much creativity to simply add another barrel on the left side and put another trigger on that and have 2 triggers, right? So it did not take them long to go from having a single shot musket to a single shot flintlock to a double barrel flintlock, rather. Okay, it didn't take long to go from a double barrel flintlock. Yeah, it did not take long to go from a single barrel flintlock to a double barrel flintlock, right? And there's lots of historical examples of that, from short ones to full size ones. Now, the thing with the double barrels is that barrels are heavy. Okay, So when you move to double barrels, the gun does get heavier. This one over here, weighs, even though it's relatively short, it's kind of like the minimal legal length without it becoming an NFA item. The barrels are about 18 inches. If you go to a longer one, because you got two barrels, a lot more steel, this becomes a very heavy gun. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of the double barrel shotguns, instead of being 12 gauges, it was actually more common for them to be 20 gauges or even smaller 28 gauges, right? 28 gauge was very, and even 16, no, not 16, 16 is actually bigger. 20 and 28, because when you use the smaller barrel, you've got less metal up here, okay? So that's one of the things to keep in mind. A lot of the older double barrel shotguns are not going to be 12 gauge, right? They're actually going to be smaller. There'll be a 20 gauge, or there'll be a 28 gauge, or some other gauge that's, so just something to keep in mind. And that's the reason, because these things, as they get longer, two barrels, the gun gets a lot heavier, okay? So going back to what I was saying, before these were cartridge firing guns, they were cap locks and they were flintlocks. And in fact, before we got to the double barrel flintlocks, right? The single barrel was more popular. It was typically used by cavalry. Okay, a lot of times we associate this with duels and stuff like that. But the cavalry, as soon as firearms started becoming a little bit more common, cavalry picked these up pretty quickly. And the cavalry that carried these flintlock pistols were referred to as dragoons. Okay, so if you ever hear the term dragoons, what it means is cavalry, because later on, like let's say in the Civil War era, even at that point, the cavalry was often referred to dragoons. The reason why they use the word dragoons is because obviously it's related to the word dragon, and when these flintlock muskets, flintlock pistols fire, black powder produces a lot of muzzle flash, and basically, when you have the entire cavalry firing at once, it looks like you've got a dragon, a fire-breathing dragon coming at you. Okay, and the other thing to be aware of is that the flintlock pistols that the dragoons carried were typically longer, right? They were probably this one's, I don't know, 8 to 10 inches. They were probably a little bit longer. I would guess maybe 12 to 16 inches. Basically, they wanted the gun to be as long as possible and still be able to control it with one hand. Now, mind you, riding on a horse, the horse is moving, you're moving. A lot of these, this one here has a rear sight and a front sight. A lot of the historical ones, they didn't even have a rear sight. They just had a little bead in the front, if they even had that. And you didn't aim so much as you pointed it in a general direction. The goal of the cavalry was to break up enemy formations, right? So they were riding into, they were assaulting from, around the flanks usually. And what they do is they wanted to put fire on an enemy position, and basically break up the formations, get them to break ranks, run, cause panic, that kind of stuff. Okay, so that was kind of the purpose of the cavalry, and they usually had these longer flintlock pistols, single barrel, but I'm sure that a lot of them were experimenting with the double barrel flintlocks, right? Because they do exist. They're in museums. They are historical pieces. And like I said, these were a little bit longer. So with these being a little bit longer, it doesn't take much to go from there to this, and basically the barrel would have been probably a little bit shorter than this, because it's a little awkward to handle with one hand. So it probably would have been about that long here, all right, and it would not have had the stock here, and then basically that was added later on. Okay, so there's an easy progression where you can see how the dragoons went from single shot flintlocks to single shot, single barrel cap locks, and then from there they went to cartridges and the double barrels. So you can see that progression. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. Let's get kind of into the Civil War era and a little bit after that. All right, so you've got these cap and ball revolvers, right? Like this one over here that's loaded. The way this works, right? put this on half cock, right? From the half cock position, you drop your powder into each chamber one by one, right? You use this lever here to compress the ball, all right? Okay, and then what you do is you put these little caps in the back, okay? All right, and basically on this 1858, basically your hammer rests on a notch between the caps, right? So you can carry this gun with all 6 chambers loaded. Like on the 1858, the Colts, usually that was carried with, if you're going to carry it around, you carry it usually on an empty chamber. So if it was a 5-shot, we'd only load 4 chambers. These Remingtons, they actually put these little notches in here. So this was actually safe to carry with all 6 chambers loaded. But, a lot of times when people think of the Old West, they think of the Peacemaker, right? This is typical gun that you'll see in the Western movies. They have the loading gate on the side, single action, right? It's a cartridge gun. You load one by one, right? You got to cock the hammer back every time when you fire it. And then when you're done, okay, you basically use this ejection rod to push these out one at a time, okay? So these were the type of pistols that they were using. At the time that they were using these type of pistols, they did have repeating rifles, right? Like the Sharps is a famous one. They were really expensive, okay? So if you wanted something with a little bit more power, right, for longer range, you either had to go really expensive, like, with a repeating rifle, or what you can do is you could get yourself one of these double barrel shotguns, right, which now has the longer barrel. And remember, you could put a slug in here, right? So you actually have the benefit of that longer range. And at this point, as we get into the late, after the 1880s, we're now getting into cartridge ammunition, right? So basically you have your cartridges, you could drop them in there, pull your hammers back. So you've got 2 quick shots that you can take on a long gun, or a relatively long gun over here, which will give you, which gives you the benefit of maybe being able to shoot a little bit further, being able to shoot, let's say, 9 pellets at a time. So that's kind of the place of this gun. So when you think of this gun, think of it more as being matched up to this gun here, the Peacemaker, or even more being matched up to the cap and ball revolvers, because these guns over here were the guns that the Civil War vets were using. These are mainly the guns that went out west, okay? So it was, a lot of times it was these 2 guns being matched up rather than these 2 guns, right? Which this one being the Peacemaker, okay? And again, the key point there is that the repeating rifles were a lot more expensive, a lot less common. If they broke, a lot harder to fix. This gun over here, it's a very simple design, right? Basically 2 barrels, really simple. The trigger mechanism is very simple. The trigger mechanism, I could pretty much gunsmith myself, because it is pretty much the same mechanism that's in this Flintlock pistol, okay? So that's how we kind of get into this Old West era, where these double barrel shotguns are being used. And here's the thing, the main reason I believe is because they are a lot cheaper than the repeating rifles, okay? Now, let's talk about the home defense that people, a lot of times people associate this with home defense. Again, these guns being cheap, these guns also being very useful farming tools, right? A way to control pests like crows and rats and stuff like that. So this is a cheap gun that farmers were able to pick up in the store and use this to basically control the pests around their farm, but also to use for home defense. So I don't think that a lot of these farmers were thinking, okay, I need to get a specialty gun for home defense. Their idea was, okay, what gun is going to be useful? What tool is going to be useful for around the farm? All right, double barrel shotgun, cheap, easy to maintain. All right, so in a home defense situation, this is the gun that they would have went to. And now that I'm kind of thinking about this, I do believe that on the farms, this was actually a lot more common than any of these pistols, right? Either cap and balls or these Peacemakers. So I think from that point forward, right, is how we ended up associating the double barrel shotgun with home defense. It was just a case that it was a cheap gun that farmers already had, and that they, you know, in a home defense type of situation, that's the gun that they went to because that's what was there. So I hope this video was interesting to you guys. I'm kind of, you know, I've been studying history for, I don't know, my entire adult life at this point. And what I'm doing in this video is I'm pulling from a lot of different areas. And it's not like I started researching this last night or something, but this is general knowledge that I have picked up through my historical studies over, you know, my entire adult life. And I'm kind of putting it into this video. If anybody watching this has other stuff to contribute, please do so in the comment section. You know, especially if you've got specific historical references you want to give, that's great. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. Hit that bell button so you get all the notifications of videos I put up. I'll talk to you guys soon.